It looked like a perfect love story. My sister Emily and her fiancé Michael had been together for years, the kind of couple who finished each other's sentences and still laughed at inside jokes no one else understood. I was proud of them, really, I was. As her younger sister, I'd watched their relationship grow from study sessions in college to a quiet proposal under fairy lights. By the time the wedding day came, tension buzzed under the lace and laughter like an electric wire. The ceremony itself was breathtaking: white roses, golden light, a soft breeze that carried the smell of champagne and rain. Then came the toast. I still remember how the bubbles caught the sunlight as we raised our glasses. Mine tasted strange. Metallic, almost bitter. I blinked and glanced around. Everyone else was laughing, clinking, sipping. Danielle's eyes found mine across the table, sharp, almost gleeful. Something twisted in my gut. I set the glass down, trying to swallow the taste, but my throat burned. Within minutes, the room tilted. My fingers went numb first, then my tongue. I tried to stand, to reach for Emily, but my knees buckled. People laughed at first. Someone shouted, "Guess the maid of honor can't handle her champagne." Danielle was beside me in an instant. Not helping, holding me down. Her nails dug into my shoulders as she hissed through clenched teeth, "Stop it. You're not ruining this day with your drama." I could barely breathe. My vision tunneled, sound dimmed to a low hum. I remember gasping, the taste of copper flooding my mouth, the distant sound of my sister's voice breaking into screams. Then chaos, someone calling for a doctor, chairs crashing, the bride's veil torn from her head as she dropped to the floor beside me. Danielle kept shouting, insisting I was faking it, until a paramedic shoved her aside. The last thing I saw before everything went black was the look on Emily's face, terror and guilt woven together. When I woke up, the world was a blur of hospital lights and antiseptic tubes. Monitors. My body felt foreign. The doctor said I'd been poisoned with a dangerous cocktail of sedatives and muscle relaxants. If I hadn't been rushed in time, I wouldn't have survived. Emily was there when I opened my eyes, mascara streaked down her cheeks. "It was her," she whispered. "We found the bottle. Danielle, she did this." I wanted to believe it was all a nightmare. But then the police arrived. And they weren't there to ask questions, they were there to arrest Michael's mother at the wedding. The fairy tale had ended exactly 15 minutes after it began. And for me, the real story, the horror story, was only beginning. When I came to, the hospital room was full of noise, monitors beeping, hushed voices outside the door, and the steady hum of something mechanical that kept time with my heartbeat. I couldn't move my legs. My throat burned from the breathing tube they'd taken out hours earlier. Emily sat slumped in a chair beside me, still wearing her wedding dress, the hem stained brown with dirt and wine. Her eyes were red and swollen, her veil balled up like a used tissue in her lap. "Hey," I croaked. My voice didn't sound like mine, it rasped, hoarse, like someone who had been screaming underwater. She looked up and immediately burst into tears. "Oh my God," she sobbed, grabbing my hand carefully, like I might shatter. "They arrested her, God, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I didn't know." "Who?" I managed. But I already knew the answer. "Danielle," she whispered. "They found the glass. And her bag. There were pills, bottles, the police said it looked planned." I'd wanted to believe maybe it was an accident, that the weird taste was just nerves or bad champagne. But the way Danielle had held me down, the gleam in her eyes, it wasn't shock. It was control. Emily told me what had happened after I collapsed. The paramedics had barely managed to stabilize me. Danielle had tried to follow them into the ambulance, yelling that I was ruining her son's day. When police searched her purse, they found a small vial of powder wrapped in tissue paper. Later, hotel security turned over footage from the catering area, Danielle pouring something into one of the champagne glasses before the toast. She didn't even try to deny it. She just told the officers, calm as you like, that I was a problem that needed solving. The wedding reception had turned into a crime scene. Guests were interviewed instead of dancing, detectives photographed spilled wine and half-eaten cake. Michael fainted when the police cuffed his mother. The venue's manager was screaming about lawsuits. And my sister, my sweet, trusting sister, spent her wedding night in an emergency waiting room, holding my hand and shaking. Over the next few days, the story exploded. Bride's mother-in-law arrested for attempted murder at wedding, that headline was everywhere. Reporters camped outside the hospital, trying to catch a glimpse of the poisoned bridesmaid. Strangers online argued about whether I'd done something to provoke her. One comment still sticks in my head: why would a mother try to kill her future daughter-in-law's sister unless she had a reason? The reason, apparently, was me. The detectives told Emily that Danielle saw me as a threat. She'd convinced herself I was jealous of Emily's relationship with Michael, that I was manipulative and wanted to turn her son against his family. They found text messages on her phone where she called me a snake in a dress and wrote to a friend, "She won't ruin this family. Not again. Not again." Those two words kept echoing in my mind. What had I ruined before? I didn't know it then, but Danielle's obsession went back years, long before the wedding, before Emily even met Michael. She'd been digging into our family, convinced we weren't good enough, not pure enough for her perfect son. And I was about to learn just how deep her hatred ran. Because while I was recovering, Danielle was sitting in an interrogation room, spinning her own version of the story. And in her twisted version, I wasn't the victim at all. I was the villain. They told me later that Danielle never once asked how I was. Not when they arrested her, not at the station, not even when she was sitting under those buzzing fluorescent lights that made everyone look half dead. According to Detective Ramirez, the lead investigator, Danielle didn't cry, didn't shout. When they read her the charges, she tilted her head and said, "You're making a mistake. I was protecting my son. Protecting him, from me." Her story was a masterpiece of delusion. She told the police that I'd been unstable for years, obsessed with my sister's relationship, trying to insert myself between Michael and Emily. She said I'd always made inappropriate comments toward him, that I wanted what wasn't mine. And the worst part? She had receipts, or at least, she thought she did. Screenshots from messages she'd fabricated on some app, twisted versions of harmless photos from our group chats. She even dug up a photo from Emily's bachelorette party where I was hugging Michael in the background and claimed it showed inappropriate closeness. "I didn't want to hurt her," she said calmly on the recording I later heard in court. "I just needed her to stop. To stop poisoning my son's mind. It was self-defense. Self-defense. Against me." When the detectives told Emily all this, she broke down. She said Danielle had always been a little controlling, but she never thought it could turn violent. Then, when they played the security footage, Danielle sneaking into the reception area, unscrewing a small vial, and tipping it into a glass clearly labeled Maid of Honor, something in my sister just snapped. She signed a formal statement that night, her wedding ring still shining under the fluorescent lights of the police station. "She tried to kill my sister," she said through tears. "And I'll never forgive her." Meanwhile, I was still in the hospital, drifting in and out of consciousness. The mixture Danielle had used was potent, a combination of crushed benzodiazepines and another tranquilizer so strong it could stop breathing if taken in the wrong dose. They suspected she'd intended to make me pass out or cause a scene, not necessarily kill me outright. But she'd gotten the dosage wrong. Her plan had been to humiliate me, make me look unstable, ruin the wedding. Instead, she almost committed murder. When I was finally stable enough to talk, Detective Ramirez came to see me. He was kind, but blunt. "She's building a story," he said, flipping through his notes. "Claims you provoked her. That you've been causing trouble in their family for months. We found printed emails, messages, even a fake diary. She's been preparing for this for a long time." I couldn't speak for a moment. My hands were shaking under the blanket. "So, she planned this?" He nodded grimly. "Yes. Every detail. In the days that followed, the investigation peeled back the layers of her madness. They found notebooks at her house, pages filled with my name, accusations, rants about corruption and jealous women. One entry read, "She smiles like she's already inside my family. She needs to learn where she belongs." When Emily came to visit me again, she looked hollow, like she'd aged 10 years in a week. "Michael's devastated," she said quietly. "He doesn't know who to believe. He keeps saying his mom isn't capable of something like this." That shattered me more than I expected. I didn't want to hate Michael. But every time I thought about his mother's hands forcing me down while I couldn't breathe, the thought of her son defending her made bile rise in my throat. Still, Emily refused to leave him. "He's not her," she said firmly. "He didn't do this. I can't punish him for her sins." I didn't argue. I was too tired. But deep down, I had a feeling this wasn't over. Danielle wasn't done with me, not by a long shot. And I was right. Because 2 weeks later, from a holding cell, she sent a letter addressed directly to me. The return address simply read, "For the girl who tried to ruin everything." The envelope was pale blue, the same shade as the bridesmaid dresses we'd worn that day. When the nurse handed it to me, I felt a cold shiver crawl up my spine. There was no stamp, no official seal. It had been delivered by hand, smuggled through some gap in the system before Danielle's formal bail hearing. My name was written in elegant cursive across the front, "To Clara." My hands trembled as I broke the seal. Inside were 3 pages of creamy stationery that smelled faintly of her perfume, something expensive and suffocating, the kind that clings long after it's gone. The first line stopped me cold. "You should thank me." I read it once, twice, then again, convinced I'd misread it. But no, she meant it. The letter was half confession, half manifesto. She wrote that she hadn't intended to kill me, only to teach me humility. That I was a parasite in Emily and Michael's life, a jealous child feeding off attention that wasn't yours. Every line was a dagger. She accused me of flirting shamelessly with her son, of twisting Emily against her family. She said she could see through my sweet act from the beginning, that I was dangerous in ways even you don't understand. And then, near the bottom of the second page, she wrote something that made my blood run cold. "You remind me of her. The first one. The one who destroyed everything before you were even born." There was no signature, just those words trailing off, ending with a shaky flourish. I showed the letter to Detective Ramirez that afternoon. His jaw tightened as he read it. "She's unhinged," he said. "But this line here, the first one, that could be something. Do you have any idea what she means?" I shook my head, though my mind was spinning. Danielle wasn't old enough for another marriage before Michael. But maybe she meant someone else, another woman Michael had dated? Or, someone in her own past? That night, Emily visited after work, her once perfect wedding ring hanging loosely on her finger. "Michael hasn't slept," she said. "He's trying to figure out why she did it. His father's barely talking. It's like the whole family's cracked open." I hesitated, then handed her the letter. Watching her face change as she read it was like watching a slow-motion car crash. When she reached the final line, she looked up, eyes glassy. "Who's the first one?" she whispered. "I don't know," I said. "But she's hiding something." Emily pressed her palms to her temples. "Clara. Michael said his mom used to have another child. A daughter. She died when she was little, or that's what he was told. He never saw photos, never even knew her name. His dad shuts down if anyone brings it up." My stomach dropped. What if that's who she means? For the first time since the wedding, I saw fear in Emily's eyes. Not just grief, fear. "You think she sees you as her?" I didn't answer. Because the truth was gnawing at the edges of my thoughts, wild and impossible. Maybe Danielle hadn't just been jealous. Maybe she'd been reliving something. Over the next few days, my recovery became secondary to the mystery unraveling around me. Ramirez pulled old records, cross-referencing hospital archives and birth certificates. Emily started pressing Michael for answers, though every time she brought it up, he looked like a man torn in two. Then, on a gray Wednesday morning, Ramirez came into my room with a file in his hands and a look I'll never forget. "She wasn't lying about a first one," he said quietly. "Danielle had a daughter. Her name was Lily. She died at age 6. The cause of death?" He flipped the page toward me. "Accidental poisoning." For a long moment, I couldn't breathe. Danielle's past wasn't just tragic, it was mirrored. History repeating itself in the most horrific way imaginable. Ramirez sighed. "We're digging deeper. But if you ask me," he hesitated, meeting my eyes. "She didn't just see you as an enemy, Clara. She saw you as a ghost she never buried." That night, I dreamt of a little girl's voice whispering from somewhere deep inside a house I'd never been in, calling my name like she already knew me. When I woke, there was a knock at the door. And standing there, pale, shaking, eyes wide, was Michael. "I need to talk to you," he said. "There's something you don't know about my mother." Michael looked nothing like the groom I remembered. The polish was gone, no crisp suit, no perfect hair, just a hollow-eyed man wearing the same clothes he'd been photographed in the night of the wedding, now wrinkled and gray with worry. He clutched a folded piece of paper like it was keeping him upright. "Can I come in?" he asked, voice cracking. Emily had just left for coffee, and though my gut screamed no, I nodded. He stepped inside and perched on the chair beside my hospital bed like a guilty schoolboy. His hands trembled as he unfolded the paper. "I shouldn't even have this," he said. "But I need you to see it before the police do." It was a letter, not new, not recent. The edges were yellowed, creased. The handwriting was unmistakable, Danielle's neat cursive. "My sweet boy, if you're reading this, it means the truth finally came back to find us. You must understand, I did what I had to. They wouldn't listen. They said I was overreacting. They said it was an accident. But I know better. The poison wasn't mine." I frowned. "She's talking about Lily," I said quietly. Michael nodded, eyes glassy. "I found this in one of her old jewelry boxes. She wrote it the year after my sister died." He swallowed hard, then continued. "She always said Lily died because she swallowed cleaning fluid. That she left it out by mistake. But this," he tapped the letter, "says she believed someone else did it." "Who?" "My father," he whispered. The words hung in the air like static. Michael's voice shook as he explained, "She said he'd been cheating back then. That Lily wasn't his child, and when the truth came out, everything fell apart. My mom claimed he killed her to get revenge. The police ruled it an accident, but she never believed them. She told me once, when I was little, that men could smile while they poisoned you. I thought she meant it metaphorically." My skin prickled. "You think she was projecting that onto me?" He nodded. "When you came into Emily's life, you reminded her of Lily. The way you left, the hair, the age, she said it was like seeing a ghost. I think she convinced herself you were some kind of punishment. That if she could stop you, she could fix what happened before. I wanted to feel sorry for her, I really did, but the memory of her nails digging into my shoulders and that sharp metallic taste on my tongue burned away any sympathy. She still tried to kill me," I said flatly. "I know," he whispered. "And I'm so sorry." His voice cracked. "She's my mother, but I can't defend her anymore. I can't even look at her without seeing that footage, without seeing you collapse." He rubbed his face with his palms, shaking. "The cops told me she's claiming temporary insanity. That she relived the trauma of losing Lily. But there's more, Clara, something you need to know before it hits the news." I tensed. "What?" He hesitated, then pulled a small flash drive from his pocket. This was in her desk. Security footage from the hotel, but not the one the police released. It's longer. There's a part they didn't see. I took it, my pulse hammering. What's on it? He looked at me, guilt and fear twisting his face. Her rehearsing. Rehearsing what? The poisoning. The air left my lungs. He explained that 2 days before the wedding, Danielle had come to the venue alone. The staff remembered her checking details. In the footage, she stood at the reception bar, pouring and repouring champagne, muttering to herself. Timing, dosage, placement, she whispered, over and over. It wasn't a spontaneous act. It was ritual. Michael was crying now. She's sick, Clara. Not just cruel, sick. She's been seeing ghosts for years. Talking to Lily's room, setting 2 plates at dinner when I was a kid, his voice broke. She told me once that if she ever lost me to a woman like my father lost her, she'd end the cycle. I thought she meant divorce. Finally, I whispered, you have to give this to Ramirez. I will, he said. I just needed to see you first. To say I'm sorry. When he left, I stared at the flash drive for a long time before calling the detective. But before Ramirez could even arrive to pick it up, my hospital phone rang. A nurse handed it to me, saying, someone named Danielle keeps trying to reach you from county jail. Should I block her? I nodded automatically. But later that night, curiosity got the better of me. I played the voicemail she'd left before the block took effect. You think you've escaped me, Clara. But you and I are bound now. I lost one daughter to poison. I won't lose another. I dropped the phone. Because in that moment, I finally understood, Danielle didn't see me as her enemy anymore. She saw me as her replacement. After that voicemail, I didn't sleep for 2 nights. I kept replaying her voice in my head, that strange, calm tone that made it sound less like a threat and more like a vow. The words sounded maternal. Possessive. As if she'd rewritten the story in her mind. I wasn't the girl she'd tried to kill, I was the daughter she'd decided to keep. Detective Ramirez picked up the flash drive the next morning. When he plugged it into his laptop right there in my hospital room, even he went pale. Danielle wasn't just rehearsing the poisoning. She was talking to someone who wasn't there. You see, Lily, she murmured, adjusting the glasses on the counter. This time, it will work. This time, they'll know it was her. At one point, she even raised her glass toward the empty room and whispered, to you, my angel. Ramirez turned off the video and rubbed his forehead. She's delusional. There's no question. But delusional doesn't mean harmless. We're going to use this to lock her up, not just in prison, but in a psychiatric unit where she can't hurt anyone else. Emily came that afternoon, exhaustion etched deep into her face. Michael's a wreck, she said. He testified at her arraignment. The judge denied bail. That's good, I murmured. She tried to speak to him in court, Emily continued, eyes wide. She told him to take care of Lily. When he asked what she meant, she just smiled and said, you'll see. The next morning, Ramirez called. You're not going to like this, he said grimly. Danielle's husband came in for questioning. He admitted there's more to the story about Lily. Apparently, years ago, when Lily died, the police had found traces of sedatives in her system, the same kind Danielle later used on me. They ruled it an accident because the bottle was labeled as household cleaner, but it had been mixed with crushed pills. The theory back then was that Lily had gotten into something she shouldn't have. But now, the parallels were impossible to ignore. Ramirez sighed. We can't prove it yet, but it's looking more and more like Danielle may have killed her own daughter, and convinced herself her husband did it. I felt sick. So she's been living inside that lie ever since? Yes, he said. And you walking into her life, young, close to her son, reminding her of the child she lost, it triggered everything. By the time I was discharged, the hospital staff had posted security at my door. Danielle's obsession had made headlines again, and the detectives weren't taking chances. But the real world didn't feel safer. Everywhere I went, people stared. Some whispered sympathy, others gossip. My life had become tabloid fodder, the bride's sister who survived. When Emily and Michael finally picked me up, I saw the toll it had taken on them. The sparkle of their wedding had turned to ashes. Michael barely spoke on the drive, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. When we reached my apartment, he turned to me suddenly. "She calls you Lily in her sleep," he said quietly. My throat closed. "What?" "Every night since she was arrested. The guards say she talks to the walls, tells you to come home. She thinks you're her daughter reborn." I didn't know what to say. Before they left, Emily hugged me and whispered, "Please, don't let her win by making you afraid." But that night, as I unpacked my bag and stared at the champagne-colored bridesmaid dress folded neatly inside, I felt a wave of nausea. The scent of roses and wine still clung to it, the scent of the day my old life ended. I threw it in the trash. And just as I did, my phone buzzed. A new message. Unknown number. No words, just a photo. It was my hospital room. Taken from the hallway. And in the reflection of the glass door, a woman's silhouette stood watching. The caption underneath read, "Home is waiting, Lily." For a full minute I just stared at the photo, waiting for my brain to catch up with what my eyes were seeing. The timestamp was that afternoon, hours after I'd been discharged. Someone had been outside my room, close enough to see me through the window. And that shape, tall, feminine, hair pulled back, looked horribly familiar. I tried to tell myself it wasn't Danielle. It couldn't be. She was in custody, locked up in a psychiatric ward until the trial. I called Detective Ramirez immediately. "Detective," I whispered, voice shaking. "Someone sent me a picture of my hospital room. It's her. It looks like her." He didn't waste time asking if I was sure. "Forward it to me," he said. Within an hour, he was standing in my apartment. He'd brought 2 uniformed officers with him. He studied the photo under the harsh kitchen light, zooming in on the reflection. "You're right," he muttered. "That's Danielle's build. But she's still in custody, or supposed to be." He stepped into the hallway, calling someone, voice low and clipped. I caught fragments, transfer mix-up, unauthorized visitor, who signed her out. When he came back, his face was grim. "She wasn't released," he said slowly. "But someone visited her this morning, a woman using a false name. She left 20 minutes before this photo was taken." "Who?" I asked. He exhaled. "We don't know yet. But whoever it was, she's helping Danielle communicate from inside." That night, the police parked a patrol car outside my building. I didn't sleep, not even for a second. Every time a car passed or a pipe hissed, I jumped. My mind kept replaying that reflection, the way the shadowed face tilted, like it was smiling. By morning, I decided to stay with Emily and Michael for a few days. Emily insisted, and I didn't argue. Their house felt safer, familiar. But even there, peace was an illusion. The first night, around 2 a.m., I woke to the sound of whispering. At first I thought it was the TV, but when I sat up, the house was silent. I crept into the hallway and saw light flickering from the kitchen. Michael was sitting at the table, phone pressed to his ear, whispering. His voice trembled. "I can't do this anymore," he was saying. "You have to stop calling. You're going to ruin everything." I froze. A pause. Then his voice, lower, softer. "No, I didn't tell her. She doesn't know about the safe. Please, Mom, just let it go." My stomach twisted. When he hung up, he caught me in the doorway. The color drained from his face. "Clara, how long were you standing there?" "Long enough," I said. "You're talking to her? After everything?" He rubbed a hand over his face. "It's not what you think. She keeps calling from the hospital phones. She says she's sorry, that she needs to explain." Explain what?" He hesitated, then looked toward the pantry door. "There's something she told me to find. She said it would prove everything." He crossed the kitchen, reached behind a stack of cereal boxes, and pulled out a small metal safe. She told me it's from the old house. My dad gave it to her before he died. She said the truth about Lily is inside. I stared at it, my pulse hammering. You believe her? I don't know what to believe anymore, he said quietly. But I can't ignore it. Emily appeared then, bleary-eyed from sleep, confusion quickly morphing into horror as she realized what was happening. Michael, she said sharply, do not open that. She's manipulating you again. But he was already kneeling on the floor, punching in a code. The lock clicked. Inside were only two things, a faded photo and a glass vial sealed with a cork. The photo showed a little girl, Lily, standing in a garden. But behind her, partially hidden by flowers, was a second child. A girl who looked exactly like me. And in the corner, in Danielle's handwriting, were the words. My Lily and my Clara, forever mine. Emily gasped. What the hell? I reached for the vial, heart in my throat. Inside was a cloudy liquid, thick and amber, with a faint residue at the bottom. Ramirez's voice echoed in my head, the same sedatives that killed Lily. Michael's face was ashen. She said she wanted to show me who was responsible, he whispered. That this would make me understand. Suddenly, the doorbell rang, sharp, frantic. Emily jumped. It's the middle of the night. Michael looked toward the window. His face went white. It's her. We froze. Because standing in the beam of the porch light, wearing a hospital gown and a twisted smile, was Danielle. And she was holding a bottle of champagne. For a moment, no one moved. Danielle stood on the porch, hair tangled, hospital bracelet glinting under the light. The champagne bottle in her hand caught the glow, half empty, the foil torn. Emily whispered, she escaped. Michael stepped forward like a man sleepwalking. Mom, how did you? She smiled. You shouldn't have opened the safe, sweetheart. Some things belong to the dead. Ramirez's number flashed on my phone, but I couldn't move. Danielle raised the bottle, eyes locked on me. We never finished our toast, Lily. The name hit me like ice water. My name isn't Lily, I said, though my voice shook. She tilted her head. You think names change the blood? Michael lunged, grabbing her wrist. The bottle slipped, shattering across the porch, shards glittering like tiny knives. Champagne foamed over her bare feet as sirens wailed in the distance. She didn't fight. She just looked at me, calm as ever. It was always going to end this way, she said softly. You came back to forgive me. The police pulled her away minutes later, barefoot and laughing. When the cruisers drove off, Emily collapsed into Michael's arms, sobbing. I stood frozen, staring at the dark porch and the broken glass sparkling like tears. Danielle was gone again, but this time I knew it wasn't over. Because before she left, she'd slipped something under the door. A photo of Lily and me side by side, faces identical, eyes matching. And scrawled across the bottom, only one of you was meant to live. The months that followed felt like living in someone else's nightmare. Danielle was sent back to the psychiatric unit under heavy security. Her trial became a national circus, headlines screaming wedding poisoner mother-in-law. I testified last. My hands shook the whole time, but I told everything, the glass, her voice, the letter, the midnight visit. Danielle just sat there, smiling faintly, like she was proud of the performance. When the verdict came, guilty of attempted murder, she didn't flinch. She only turned to Michael and whispered, "Take care of her, my Lily." That was the last thing she ever said to us. 15 years in a psychiatric prison. Emily cried. Michael didn't. I felt nothing, just an emptiness where fear used to live. But as they led Danielle away, I noticed her mouthing something. I couldn't hear it, but I could read her lips. You'll thank me later. 3 years later, I walk without a limp. The poison damaged my nerves, but not my will. I finished school, studied criminal law, and now stand in court helping others find justice, the kind I nearly lost. Emily and Michael moved away, started over. They named their daughter Lily, not out of fear, but to reclaim the name. Sometimes I still dream of that wedding, the glittering glasses, the moment before everything broke. But I don't see Danielle anymore. I see light, and my sister's smile. I'll never forgive what she did. Forgiveness isn't required for peace. Instead, I built something stronger, a life where love isn't poisoned, and survival is its own victory. The wedding lasted 15 minutes. But the rest of my story, the part she couldn't destroy, will last forever.